If you've ever attempted a muscle up, you know that strength alone is not enough. You also need the right technique, and only when you combine the two do you get to do stuff like this. In many cases, I see people being more than strong enough, but they still struggle getting over the bar or doing clean reps. This can make muscle ups incredibly frustrating, as even the smallest mistakes can hold you back. But at the same time, that's also what can make them really rewarding, because with a few technical tweaks, you can make huge jumps in progress. One day you can't perform any, and suddenly something just clicks that allows you to perform multiple. But learning the optimal technique can take a long time, especially if you're trying to figure it out through trial and error. So in this video, I'll share one of those details that might just make the difference for you. The tip goes like this: muscle ups are like kicking a football. Now, to understand what this actually means, we first have to look at one of the most important technical aspects: learning how to use momentum. A clear example of why this matters is how much more strength is required when starting from a full dead hang compared to using just a slight swing. That's because it's easier to redirect existing motion than it is to create it from scratch. And don't get it twisted, even the best athletes are using and have mastered momentum, like Ian Barsiegel, Liu Wang, Max True, and all these other high-level athletes. It's an integral part of the muscle up, and while removing it entirely is definitely possible, it's almost like a different exercise due to different pulling mechanics. So fundamentally, the goal isn't to remove momentum, but to optimize it in a way that looks clean, effortless, and efficient. And the first step in this process is a controlled swing. This involves taking a small step back, jumping into the bar, and letting the momentum carry you forward. Once the swing reverses and the momentum shifts backwards, that's when the pull begins. It's a simple but important principle, and you can think of it sort of like pushing a broken down car. Difficult when it's holding still, and easier once the wheels start rolling. In the muscle up, we also want to get a rolling start by swinging. And this automatically creates an important technical element: learning to initiate the pull exactly as the momentum shifts backwards. Pull too early and you'll still be going forward, pull too late and the momentum dies out. Practicing this timing is crucial, but that's not the point of this video, because in addition to the swing, pros are using another technique for creating momentum, one that makes their muscle ups more efficient but also much cleaner. This technique is known as the hip drive, and the method can be applied across all levels and progressions of the muscle up. So to explain it, it makes sense to start with the easiest and most visible one: the kipping muscle up. Here the knees are actively lifted as the pull begins, creating a quick upwards movement. At first glance, this kip essentially looks like an aggressive and powerful knee raise. But that interpretation is misleading, because in any kicking motion, the real power shouldn't be coming from your knees but from your hips instead. Something that's very natural to us in other sports. For example, try to stand up right now and imitate the way you would kick a football. Most of us have optimized a kick like this, and you should instantly notice how the force is coming from your hips, even if the knee is bending. This feeling is your guideline and what you want to replicate as the pull begins. And what makes this so significant is that you no longer need to rely on bending at the knees, as the hips can do most of the job on their own. So you can keep your legs straight and still produce a powerful hip drive, just as you can do a powerful kick with straight legs. This instantly makes your muscle ups more aesthetic, and in contrast to the kipping muscle up, now you can progress directly into the strict muscle up, by gradually turning it from an aggressive and quick movement to a slower and more fluid motion. At the advanced level, this eventually makes the hip drive more subtle, but it's still an active adjustment. As the swing reverses and the pull begins, the legs should still be tensed up and simultaneously moving forward. This isn't really visible and often goes unnoticed because the body is moving backwards at the same time. But even though the legs look passive, this hip drive is what allows me and others to do a smooth transition and a no-dip muscle up. And of course, getting to that point isn't easy, but like any movement, it can be refined through targeted exercises. One of my favorites is the diagonal pull-up, while actively engaging the hips with each rep. This way you can practice the timing and feeling that will later translate into the muscle up. And it's also a great way to start building the specific strength at the same time. But before you jump straight into this exercise and the hip drive in general, it's important to know that even though it's possible and looks best with straight legs, it's still more intuitive to start learning while bending at the knees. The straight-legged technique requires more precise timing and control, and early on you'll likely have to compensate for the lack of technique through pure strength. That's why the kipping muscle up is often faster to learn and more achievable as your first progression. And that's a good thing, because it helps your body understand the pulling path and what it feels like to transition over the bar. So adding a traditional kip to the exercise is also a perfectly valid option in the beginning. But that said, it's important to approach it as a temporary phase. Bending at the knees quickly becomes a hard stuck habit, and it's difficult to unlearn if done over a long period. Eventually, it becomes almost automatic when nearing failure. And from my own experience, this can be pretty frustrating when you get stronger and want to progress into the strict muscle up. I think many get stuck in this phase for too long, thinking that the next progression is too big of a jump. But the reality is that if you can perform just a few kipping muscle ups, then it's probably time to transition. So we basically learn the kipping muscle up to build experience and confidence, only to unlearn it again. And this also means that if you already have a really solid strength base, maybe from pull-ups, then it might make sense to skip it entirely and focus on diagonal pull-ups. And once you're high enough, you can imagine doing a headbutt over the bar to create the quick forward motion needed for the transition. If you want to test if you're already strong enough, I've made a separate video about the requirements. But skipping a progression is only if you're already close, and for the vast majority of people, the kipping muscle up is the first success to build upon. Before ending the video, I'll be quick to mention that if you're looking for some new calisthenics equipment, my sponsors at Gornation have some very high quality options. You can use my code Jacob10 for 10% off. I put the link in the description. That was it for the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something new, and I will see you in the next one.